Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Download their top-rated app. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook. Use promo code RTRS. And brought to you by Nature Pet Foods. Slow cooked with Super Fusion. Get 20% off your first By Nature order by using promo code RTRS20 at checkout at chewy.com. Big Barker Therapeutic Dog Beds. Get yours at bigbarker.com/Ricky. LL Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged. And our friends at Kinetic Skateboarding get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver. On the show today, we welcome back a favorite of the process era of both the fans and one Joel Embiid, Justin Anderson. Sixers sign, I think, all of their draft picks now. And we will look at how the rest of the East did in free agency and some mailbag as well. Before we get going, I wanted to help out a Ricky listener, and if you could help out, listener. So a Ricky listener named Brant, his dad, Steve, got laid off due to COVID-19. A couple weeks later, he gets diagnosed with cancer. The second time he did like 20 years ago, I guess, and beat it. And they have a GoFundMe up. And it's funny, Brant is from Dallas, has never been to Philly, became a Sixers fan because of Zaire Smith. No more Zaire, but he is sticking around. So, wow. Yeah, if you can help out, if you just go to my Twitter, and we'll put it on the Ricky Twitter as well. Obviously anything. And if you can't, that's cool too. I know it's a hard time for everybody, but if you could keep Brant and his dad, Steve, and his family in your thoughts, that would be great as well. So we're got our fingers crossed for you and thinking about you. Without any further ado, Amos and the Chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy that I don't have a thing for today. That is Mike Levin. I didn't think of it till just now. Do you have one?
A guy that's awake.
That's all we could. You know, in the beginning of the Ricky, somebody emailed us about the Hinkie interview, and we had talked about that, I think, a couple weeks ago. It is funny that in the early days of the Ricky, maybe the first year or two, weren't you recording at like 5 a.m. your time? Because I think it was 8 a.m. my time, right?
Yeah.
On the phone.
Something at an obscene hour, and I was living with Sharp at the time, yeah.
We did it because I would do it from the IP studio, and that there was like a window of time, I think in the 8 a.m. hour that I would have to record it. And I think you were up at 5 a.m. We've come a long way.
I don't even know how that would have been like audible. Like, how could I make a single point? Well, first year of the Ricky, I was sedated.
If you listen to them back, I would imagine it takes you 25 minutes to ramp up.
That's probably right.
I would imagine to the middle.
That's still the case.
Yeah, it is. You are clicking more in the second half of the pod. I liked our Apple Podcast review of the week. 2,790 5-star ratings. When we get to 3,000, I read the reviews. Hey, we'll make this sponsored by Kinetic this week. Kinetic Skateboarding. Their Black Friday sale today is Saturday. Is going to 8 p.m. today. But if you're looking for Christmas gifts for the person in your life who either skateboards, snowboards, or just wears clothes, Kinetic Skateboarding. Use promo code Dave Silver for 9.1% off your first order. So the Apple Podcast review today, subject line, 100% success rate. in which the guy who insisted that signing LeBron would have been more trouble than it was worth, and the guy who celebrated when the Sixers traded up to pick Fultz instead of Tatum remind us of how they were and are always right about everything. Unfortunately, it's the only podcast about the Sixers. 5 stars.
Look, there's more hits than misses, but we went through the misses together.
Yeah, we should get Amos to re-record a song that is like, we were right more times than we were not, instead of just right. All right, big news in a love letter or a love signing from Daryl Morey to both Joel Embiid and the Process faithful. The Sixers signed Justin Anderson to a 2-year partially guaranteed deal. Justin Anderson, I think we're pretty sure, was a favorite of Joel Embiid. Played about 10 minutes a game for Brooklyn last year, but I think maybe half the season or even less than half the season. So now it has been an off season, I think, that either publicly or less publicly has been a very pro Embiid off season for the Sixers, sort of, opposed to previous off seasons where they kept people aboard who were involved in publicly shaming him on Twitter. So it does seem like a 180 for them. Seems like a good thing. Signing
some of Embiid's online trolls, I think, was a weird choice of Brian Colangelo. But Daryl's trying something else, and I think that I respect it.
Yeah. I don't think, Justin Anderson, when we were talking with MOC a few weeks ago about the draft prospects, we had talked about 3-and-D guys who neither shoot the three well or defend well, or either do one of the two. Justin Anderson sort of fits in that he's a pretty consistent, just below 30% 3-point shooter. And defensively is one of those guys that looks like he defends well because he's active and tries hard, but I don't know if he's actually good.
Yeah. I think I trust the defense more than I trust the shooting.
Yeah.
If the 3 is significantly smaller than the D, neither of them are very good, but they needed another big body. They need guys to wave some towels. Very good towel waver, Justin Anderson. So they currently have 17 roster players, including plus 2 guys on 2-ways. Paul Reed, who they just signed to a 2-way, and Dakota Matthias, who's a shooter out of Purdue, a couple years older. So they'll have to make a decision. I do think that we didn't talk about Walton Jr. yet. He's a point guard out of Michigan, played a little bit with the Clippers. It's probably a Doc Rivers signing that he likes him as a person and thinks he's fine. He's a good shooter, Derek Walton, except just a little bit undersized and doesn't do a ton much of like creating and stuff, but he can certainly shoot it, has shot it pretty much at every level. So I think it'll be having these non-guaranteed guys that are competing for roster spots, Ryan Brokoff included. I do think it's like there's going to be some competition in training camp. And if one of these guys pops or whatever, some other guys don't, then I think that there's still like trade potential on the horizon. I do think that there is just a constant, it always felt we're back to that like level of unease or discomfort kind of when Hinkie was here, when it's like, hey, anything could happen at any time. Like there's not going to be just set times. And it's like, okay, this is our roster for the next, 3 months or whatever it is. So I do think that you might see some action going into training camp. Yeah.
So there's 14 guys under contract as fully guaranteed. And then, as you mentioned, Brokoff, Anderson, Walton Jr., now Dakota Matthias and Paul Reed, they confirmed this morning, I think I saw Bodner, that Paul Reed will get a 2-way. Matthias is going to get a 2-way. They signed Isaiah Joe to a 3-year, $4.2 million deal, 2 years of which guaranteed and $2.4 million guaranteed. So he'll be a roster guy. You want to talk about, obviously I don't know anything about Dakota Matthias or Derek Walton, and you gave them a little bit there. Could you give a little bit more on both of those, or do they deserve a little more?
I don't think Derek Walton's making this team. I think he's just kind of just a guy in the point guard department. He's a 4-year guy at Michigan. I think he might have overlapped with Stauskas, or maybe just missed each other. And like a very just college point guard. There's not much else there. He's a good shooter, but I don't think that the rest of his game is strong enough for him to like land anywhere for a long time. Dakota Matthias, we talked about a little bit. He's a bigger shooter. He's like 6'4", 6'5", can shoot out of tight windows, can relocate, pretty smart player, not very athletic, but moves around a lot. So he's like active. He'll be fine.
I think as far as the chances of Justin Anderson making the team, you did mention that is Justin Anderson isn't particularly good at any of it, but that is the size and kind of player that they could use that they don't have a ton of. I think if none of those other guys pop at all, I think the default might be Justin Anderson because he's been in the NBA and there's the Embiid thing. So if Matthias or they signed Matthias to the two-way. If Brokoff, Anderson, Walton Jr., if of those guys, I think Anderson would probably get the default. Well, Brokoff can't play and Walton Jr. can't play. We might as well have Justin Anderson, who we know can play in the league. I think there's or they might not carry 15. It's possible they don't carry 15 too.
Totally. Yeah. I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with carrying as a 15th roster spot a big wing body who is mostly there just as Joel's friend. Like I have no, like how many teams are trying to sign Giannis's brothers?
Right.
Left and right. Popping up brothers. These are just guys renaming their last name Antetokounmpo so they can sign in the NBA on a two-way. It's everybody. I have no problem with it. Let's start treating Embiid like the superstar that he should be. And so friggin' sign his friend, sign his dad. I don't care. Whatever.
Who is the guy? Who is the guy that everyone used to have to sign with Rodman? It was a white guy that used to play, like was on a lot of Rodman's teams and was like the Rodman whisperer. Man, I wish I could remember.
All I can think about is J.R. Smith's brother also getting signed.
Oh yeah. And didn't the Sixers didn't they at least invite Tobias Harris's brother to camp or something?
Yeah, that's right. Terry Harris.
Yeah, come on. I mean, having a Joel friend on the team, there's nothing wrong with that. So it seems like this is what it will be going into camp, as in camp starts this week anyway.
Ben gets to pick the photographers. Like why shouldn't Joel get to have a friend as on the roster spot?
Well, the photographer was already here. Alex Subers was already here. It was funny. So when somebody noted on Twitter and they tagged me in it that Subers had taken pictures of Maxey, somebody responded, between Simmons and Maxey, Alex Subers might as well just be the 76ers photographer. And he responded, I am the 76ers photographer. Yeah, he does have that gig. So it seems like this will be probably the roster to start the season. So this is what we have. Camp starts this week, and then the first preseason game is the 15th and the 19th. They're going to play 2 preseason games, one against the Pacers and one against the Celtics. And then the season starts on the 22nd, but I haven't seen the official schedule yet of who they play that day or anything. So I wanted to talk about the rest. We've talked obviously extensively about the Sixers in free agency. I wanted to go through the teams in the East and decide with you whether we think they're better this year because of the moves or not better this year. You up for that?
Yeah.
All right. So Milwaukee Bucks publicly seemed like sort of a clusterfuck because of what happened with the Bogdanovich thing, in that they basically fucked up by finishing something too early and leaking it. So they end up, the ins on the team now weren't there last year. Drew Holiday, DJ Augustine, Torrey Craig, Bryn Forbes, Bobby Portis, and Nick Stauskas signed to a non-guaranteed deal.
Really makes sense. I really did not think that he would be back in the NBA.
No,
so that's a nice treat.
Well, they did. They don't have Kyle Korver, so out are Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, Ersan Ilyasova, Wes Matthews, Sterling Brown, Kyle Korver. According to you, the Bucks better or worse this year than they were last year? Or is their roster better or worse?
Yeah, I think a little bit better. The Drew trade, obviously, they paid handsomely to get him, but I do think that that's a better team. I think that Eric Bledsoe, you just don't want him on your team in playoff time. He just has come up short too much and isn't the player you need. Drew, Chris Middleton, and Giannis is a really nice, fit, happy threesome there. But I think that they're a little bit, aside from Drew Holiday and I would say Torrey Craig, none of those other guys can really play in the playoffs. And so I think it kind of indirectly will make Mike Budenholzer play Giannis more minutes in the playoffs because there are fewer guys that he can credibly use to replace him, I guess. I think they're a top heavier team and less deep, but I think that's actually probably a good thing.
I agree they're better. I think Bobby Portis can play in the playoffs. If he does what they want him to do, or if he is somebody who's annoying to watch, but if he goes and he is one guy that if he goes and does what Budenholzer wants him to do, he will be overvalued within a year because he'll probably just shoot a ton of threes and play defense and he'll be fine.
He hasn't played much defense. He's a pretty bad defensive player. He's in that I'm not quick enough to move with fours and I'm not long enough or strong enough to protect the rim. That's the most. That used to be that the tweener was the 3-4 or the 1-2. What can you do? But really, the tweener is you're too big to defend fours.
You don't think he can defend fours?
His defensive numbers are really very bad. He's been on bad teams. Yeah. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe he gets better, but there hasn't been an example of him doing good stuff. I just don't think he's never been engaged on the defensive end. He sometimes will give effort in the sense of hey, he's moving around a lot. He's a physical guy. He's punching somebody in the face, but it's not a great team defense. But maybe they think they could bring it out of him for sure.
I agree with you. It's funny if you look at the stats alone. The Drew Holiday, the Eric Bledsoe to Drew Holiday thing doesn't look like that much of an upgrade. But when you watch them, especially during the playoffs, Bledsoe now for 2 years has been fucking terrible in the playoffs. I think
more than that. Wasn't it 3 years ago that the Bledsoe, Terry Rozier?
You're right. It was 3 years. So 3 years now he's been terrible in the playoffs.
You get embarrassed by Terry Rozier.
Right.
That's tough. That's just tough.
Can't imagine that. Can't imagine our team getting embarrassed by Terry Rozier.
No.
I think they're better. I'm curious to see Drew in this role. And I'm also curious to see how much creation responsibility they give to Drew Holiday during the season because that is one of the problems for them in the playoffs is that Giannis, in some ways similar to Ben in the playoffs, all of a sudden when they just sort of crowd the lane and don't let him do what he does, they have not had that secondary creator aside from Middleton, who's only okay at it. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited that Drew Holiday is going to be on a title contending team. It'll be fun to watch. Not so fun to watch against us, but it'll be fun to watch. Yeah, before we get to...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that I think that there are more guys now in Drew, in Augustine, even in Bryn Forbes that can handle the ball a little bit and actually, be threats from everywhere in the pick and roll, especially if Giannis or Brook Lopez is running the pick and roll, then you're really going to have to start making the defense make decisions. Because if you go under on a Drew Holiday pick and roll to cover Giannis at the rim or whatever, then he can step into that. DJ Augustine, same thing. Bryn Forbes, same thing. And so I think now that they maybe have a little bit less on the defensive end, but more, I would say, shooting. And it's when you have Giannis or Brook Lopez behind you, you can give up a little bit more.
Yeah, you had mentioned, I think, Augustine maybe not being able to play in the playoffs. I think he can play 10 minutes a game in the playoffs. And I think he is enough of a change of pace from the rest of what they do. That's when those guys are great. That's when guys like Augustine or JJ Barea, when they're so much different than the other guys, I think he can cause a little bit of, a little bit of like hecticness. They overpaid for him. They overpaid for everything they did this offseason, but I think he'll be helpful for them.
Yeah, he's going to score 40 against us for sure.
Oh, without question. By the way, he's a guy that would have scored 40 against Drew. That's the exact kind of a player that Drew Holiday has historically had trouble with. Before we get to the Celtics, our sponsor By Nature, slow cooked superfood, pet food. We're very big at the Ricky for keeping your pet in great condition. By Nature keeps your pet healthy. You think about what goes into your body, what's important going into your body, what's healthy going into your body. You should think about the same thing with pet food. By Nature thinks about it. They make the food so it's going to be healthier for your pet. They do it in two ways. They cook it slow so it stays nutrient rich. And this part of it is just basic, right? They just use better ingredients. They use better ingredients. They use higher quality protein. That's why it's a little more expensive, but think about the life of your pet, the health of your pet. It's worth it. And the ingredients, like I said, premium proteins, spinach, blueberries, ginger, coconut oil, all those sorts of things that you think about that would be superfoods for humans or superfoods for pets as well. Go to chewy.com, use the promo code RTRS20 for 20% off your first order. Think about this too. The company that owns By Nature has been in this space for 40 years, family owned and operated, never had a recall on any other pet foods. So it's better for your pet. Your pet will love it. Like I've said before, if it's healthy for them, you don't have to worry about what size the dog is for the kind of food. You don't have to worry about indoor cat, outdoor cat. It's healthy, so it's good for any of your pets. Just try it. If you don't like it, well, I'm not going to give you a refund or anything, but I'm telling you, your pet will like it. Again, go to chewy.com, use promo code RTRS20 for 20% off your first order. Or if you want to learn more about By Nature, go to bynaturepetfoods.com. By Nature Pet Foods, you can read all about it there. It's good. Your dog, your cat wants to be in the good boy club, good girl club. Just got a new one from Canada this week. Be posting on the website later this week. By Nature Pet Food. All right, you ready to talk about the Celtics? You're always ready to talk about the Celtics. Okay, who comes in for the Celtics? Tristan Thompson. And in this, I only counted first-round picks. So Tristan Thompson, Aaron Nesmith, Peyton Pritchard, and Jeff Teague are all in. Out are Gordon Hayward, Brad Wanamaker, and Enes Kanter. Are the Celtics better or worse?
I think a little worse. I think Hayward is like a helpful player to them, and to lose him for nothing is, I think, dangerous. Tristan Thompson, I think he's a good rebounder and pretty much weak at everything else. He's
a good defender, I think. At least if he
not around the rim. Like he's not a defensive anchor. Like he brings down rebounds, but like especially against Embiid, just not a guy that I'm concerned about at all.
I agree with that. I do think, though, and this is, again, I haven't watched much of him the last year or two or whatever, but from what I remember from his Cavs days, he was definitely really good pick and roll defender and could hang with perimeter guys on switches and stuff. So seems very playable in the playoffs.
Yeah, if you're simply saying we got rid of Enes Kanter and replaced him with Tristan Thompson, I think that's an upgrade for sure. Because he's a better defender, especially in space, than Kanter is. But I think maybe I'm just like a really big Daniel Tice fan, but like I would be just as far as like spacing the floor goes, and I think playing a little bit above the rim, I think Daniel Tice is a better player there than Tristan is. But he's also a guy that's going to do dirty work and get rebounds and be physical and all that stuff. So I don't think it's a bad signing. I just don't think I don't know why the Celtics kind of haven't had. And maybe they think Robert Williams is that guy. I don't. They haven't had a like rim protecting big man to anchor the defense since Horford left. They haven't really tried it. And even Horford is like not a huge shot blocker type.
And they've been rumored to get so many of them.
Everybody. And like Miles Turner, like that is, if you look at their roster, that's the kind of thing that would be like, well, let's place one of the few 3-and-D bigs into this spot who can actually block shots and all this other stuff. But I mean, they're a good defensive team because of how well they stop penetration and how well they move around the perimeter and stuff. But I think Gordon Hayward was the other guys were very healthy. Kemba and Marcus Smart and Jalen and Jason. And now that if you lose one of them, then you're starting to get into like Shemi Ojale rookies. Like it becomes the window for like how safe we feel if you're them is shrinking. And I think Brad Wanamaker's a good player. I like Brad Wanamaker. We talked to Jerome Allen about it, right?
Yep.
I don't think they had a great draft, and I think Jeff Teague is fine and he's not a guy that him and Kemba can't play together.
No.
And
he's a fine backup point guard.
He's a fine backup. Yeah. There was somebody posted I never listened to Bill Simmons. I never have. I've never like read his stuff. Like I know people like were like, well, when I loved him in high school or whatever. I never had any Bill Simmons like affinity for him as a writer or anything. And so I only take joy in like how far he's fallen as like a guy who's got his finger on the pulse of the culture or whatever it is. But there was him talking, I think Jackie McMullen, somebody posted a clip of him realizing that like Danny Ainge being this like asshole that has no loyalty to any of his players, that just like simply, basically the book on Hinkie, which wasn't true, about like, he only treats his players as assets and doesn't like show any like care, I guess, to them. Maybe that is making people not want to come play for him. Trading Isaiah Thomas for, after he played for them when his sister died, and then like rumoring to trade Kemba and like all this stuff is just like, I don't think people just don't like Danny Ainge. And like, I take joy in that, because fuck Danny Ainge.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing that a team that seems to be so deep in wing players can also seem so thin.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because they have three really good ones, and most teams don't have three really good ones, but they only have three, and so below that, and that's where Hayward would matter. And Hayward,
he's kind of like, he plugs the holes a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he's not the guy at this point in his career after these injuries. Like he's not the guy that's gonna like command the defense or like make the plays that he would have made in Utah. He's just kind of like, I will do the things that like, I'll clean up the mess a little bit while the other guys do stuff. And I think that they miss that when he's not there.
Yeah. And he can do all those things. He is a good creator. I'm not talking like high level of any of these things. He's a good shooter. He can get to the rim. He can do all those things. He has a really nice offensive skill set that was a good, secondary or tertiary creator for them that they're now missing. I'm bigger on the Tristan Thompson side. And remember, they do have Daniel Tice still, so they have both of them. They will obviously, how much better they are will obviously just be defined by if Tatum and Brown take another leap. That's basically it. So I think roster wise, it's probably less, because I think the upgrade in Thompson is not as big as the downside on Hayward. But remember, they haven't been able to lean on Hayward to be healthy through any of their playoff runs, really. Sure. So
it's interesting. I think like we think about, obviously we're mostly a Sixers podcast. So we're thinking about the Sixers and how they haven't gotten over the hump and everything, but like neither of the Celtics. And so you've been, we think about, this ruining Joel and Ben's prime, or they haven't like done enough to surround them with them. But like, even though Boston has absolutely embarrassed the Sixers on multiple occasions over this, this era, basically, these Celtics have not gotten to the finals. And it's not like, you talk about people assuming like, hey, we're good and young. We're just going to keep being good and young as they get older. Like it might just not happen. And so and I would assume that there's some level of disappointment if you're a Celtics fan, of like, how are we like maybe they thought Kemba was that signing. I kind of never did, but like, how are we breaking through to not just be like a constant like second round or losing the conference finals, be like the 3 seed or whatever for most of these guys' prime? Like, what are we doing to really elevate us to contender status? I feel like that's a frustration that they probably have or should have that we've never really talked about.
Well, I would say though, so they have been to the conference finals twice now, right? Jason Tatum, and this is not a small difference. Tatum is 22 and Embiid is 26. Simmons is 24. 2 years, it's significant is what I would say. And if the Sixers had been to the conference finals twice with Embiid at 22, we're constantly looking for young excuses for Embiid and Simmons, and they're significantly older than Tatum. So while I would agree with you that they are probably like, when is this going to happen? I think from a neutral perspective, you would say, well, if in Jason Tatum's first few years, he was in the conference finals twice, and last year as the best player on the team already, I think you'd probably be pretty happy. The question is, how much better can he get? That's the real question.
I'm going to already do that Ben and Joel have missed a combined 3 years total of their careers with, season-ending injuries. So those ages are a little bit inflated to me. I would want to shrink those down. Like I'm not counting this year to my own age. Like I'm a redshirt. I feel like I'm a redshirt 30. And so I think that Embiid and Simmons should be able to have that sort of set in with their ages as well.
The problem is once you do that, you also have those injuries with them, which and Ben's list is not really like as much of an Iron Man as it seems like. He's missed a year to a broken foot. He's missed significant time due to a back injury, and then the playoffs due to a knee injury. So, I think it's all wrapped up in how you look at it. The
what it sounds like you're saying is that Jason Tatum is due for an injury, and you're going to go to Boston and hack his knee off.
Yeah, or maybe Jerome, secret agent. Wow. Brooklyn Nets, obviously it's tough to figure out with them. One, because Irving didn't play last year. Two, because they're pretty heavy rumors to acquire James Harden. That said, the players that are in, Jeff Green, Landry Shamet, out, Garrett Temple, Justin Anderson, Wilson Chandler, Tyler Johnson, they'll obviously be better than they were last year. But it's almost impossible to figure out what any of this means, given what, honestly, with their roster as it is, I think they're really, really good. The question is how much the Kyrie Durant thing actually works, and how poisonous Kyrie is.
Well, and how back to full strength Durant is from a really bad injury. I worry about defense for them. I think Kyrie's a bad defender. Durant is a good defender, but again, coming off the injury, so maybe this is the he's drifting into the part of his career where he's like, I'm mostly just going to focus on offense and maybe occasionally I'll block a shot, but I'm don't put me on the best guy, which he's obviously earned. I think Shamet's a great pickup for them, but again, not a defender. I got a weird. I think they're a smart organization. I think they're going all in. I wonder if there is some level of Brooklyn. They haven't had superstars for so long, and now they do, and now it's like we're hiring Steve Nash to be the head coach. I think like getting rid of Garrett Temple or letting him walk, I think was a weird sign to me. Like he's a real perfect veteran presence type that can, handle the ball and let Kyrie run around screens and also be a good defensive player from the guard position and just like a helpful locker room guy for like the young guys that Kyrie and KD will probably not give a shit about. And to let him walk, I think, is a weird sign of like maybe this is just too much Kyrie's team that they're just going all in on in like bad vibes. Like I feel like there just might be like it might just be a little bit of a like Steve Nash, Dwight Howard Lakers here. It might just not work. And so I don't know. I'm surprised that they have not traded Dinwiddie yet. But I guess they're sort of keeping their powder dry until a possible James Harden trade. Yeah.
we never talked about Kyrie's quote that after they hired Steve Nash, he was like, well, we don't really think about it like a head coach. Any one of us could be the head coach for any game. You know, like I could be the head coach. And I'm just like, people make excuses for dumb shit that Kyrie Irving says all the time. And even Jerome Allen on this podcast made excuses for dumb shit Kyrie Irving says.
Yeah.
That's fucking dumb to say. It's a dumb idea to have. But if you do have such a dumb idea, you should keep it to yourself. Like
for sure,
it undermines the coach. It highlights something about you that seems negative in a public sphere. And I know players seem to respect Kyrie Irving as a player, but man, so many players seem to like dislike playing with him. And if I were coming in as a coach, and like one of the 2-star players was like, yeah, we don't really think of him as the head coach, I'd want to fucking murder that guy. You know?
I mean, to me, it is all the main problem isn't that like he gave the quote and that like people saw it and that's like that's going to have after effects. To me, it's that he thinks that.
Right. That it's true.
The fact that that he believes that this is true, even if he didn't say it, if he just believes it's true, I think is a dumb thing to think. And you see like well-coached teams going places and poorly coached teams not all the time. And so I don't know. I don't think that Durant is very good. I think he's one of the best players, scorers of our generation, maybe of all time. And I think that once he gets healthy, then he's going to be, he still has good years left in him. But I think this year it's a really bad injury, the Achilles. And so, I just think I don't think it's this year for Brooklyn. I think there's going to be growing pains. And the question is like, and they'll win games. They'll look unbeatable in some games. And then I think that they will not get past the second round. But the question is, will they be able to like hunker through the growing pains? And is there enough connective tissue to like a Kyrie and KD team long-term to like, okay, this year didn't work because of X, Y, and Z. Let's adjust and move forward under these parameters and stuff. I basically don't think there's enough defense there, but I think it also could just blow up because these are volatile guys.
The Achilles, it's not the year, as you said, it's usually not the year you come back. It's the next year. And one of the things I would say the positive thing, if you're looking for optimism with Durant for this year, is that the thing that it saps you of is explosiveness. And that's not what his game is really based on. And he will age well with or without injury because he's so tall and he's such a good shooter that he's almost impossible to guard anyway. Even if he's not doing anything, he's impossible to guard. So it will be interesting too if they're able to trade for James Harden and Kyrie Irving on the same team. Just doesn't seem like it could work. Right?
I mean, I don't even.
How could it possibly work?
I don't want to be defense dweeb here, but like, who covers people? What are we doing? Are you just going to be like, hey, we'll give you like 1.05 points per possession if you just like let us stay on offense the whole time? We'll just grant you it. Okay, we score. All right, that 1.05 points for them, and then we just keep going back and forth, and we just don't even try it. We'll just give it to you. It's like an intentional walk. Very odd.
That they would just be so good at offense that the other team couldn't keep up with them. But history shows that you at least need like a top, except for that one LeBron team that didn't try during the regular season, you basically need even if your offense is number one, you need a top 10, 12-ish defense to win a championship. And I would agree with you that I don't see the bones for it there with those three guys. Durant's a good defender, but and Harden, as we've mentioned, when he tries, but Kyrie's terrible. And it just doesn't seem like there's enough there, even if you're playing Jared Allen and, you know, whoever else in that starting.
Yeah, and I don't think Jared Allen's a great defender. I think he's a fine rim protector. They still have DeAndre Jordan on that team taking up space. Like it just, I think they might be, I think like Nets management, like got calls from the cool kids, and now they're just like doing whatever the cool kids say. And they're like, okay, yeah, we can get Steve Nash to coach. He's not even coach. We'll just call him like friend. We don't even need it. He's our friend. Everybody, yeah, it's cool, fine. I'll wear this. Sean Marks now changing his whole wardrobe. Like whatever you do, man. I get that it's a superstar league, but like I think you might be in bed with the wrong one in Kyrie.
Head friend, Steve Nash.
Head friend.
We have two more teams in the East to get to. Before we do, Big Barker Therapeutic Dog Beds, longtime sponsor of the Ricky. Big Barker had all these claims, right? They were like, this is important for your dog's joints. This bed is better than other beds. And it was never proven. It was just suggested. Well, now it's proven. University of Penn School of Veterinary Medicine and Clinical Study does a clinical study on Big Barker dog beds. What do they find? So they did a study on 40 dogs that were 3 years old for a month. They found sleeping on Big Barkers, a 10% improvement in the dog's gait, a 17% improvement in joint function, a 21% improvement in pain severity, a 15% overall improvement in quality of life. This is proven. This is true. Big Barker is a better bed for your dog. It's the best bed for your dog. Big, small, whatever, Big Barker. Go to bigbarker.com/Ricky, bigbarker.com/Ricky. Or if you want to see what it looks like for a dog to lay on a Big Barker, go to the Process Pup section of rightstoRickySanchez.com. Before you even lay on it, you can see that the dog is supported up off the floor, as opposed to normal dog beds where, as soon as the dog lays on it, it goes all the way to the floor. It's different. I've laid on the Big Barker and I can feel the difference. I'm 155 pounds. I can lay on a Big Barker that's Rebel size. Rebel's 40 pounds, and it does not sink all the way to the ground. It supports your dog's joints. You go to bigbarker.com/Ricky. You get the Big Barker with the Process Pup patches that you can iron on or not iron on, whatever you want to do. Dogs are just like humans. They have joints. They need to be comfortable when they sleep to feel better the next day, especially as your dog gets older. Big Barker is the bed. 10-year warranty. The foam doesn't flatten or they replace it for free. 1 year at-home trial. If you don't like it, if the dog won't sleep on it, which happens, whatever happens with any sort of bed, return it. They will even pay for the shipping. Handmade in the USA. Bigbarker.com/Ricky. Big Barker dog beds. All right, here we go. 2 more teams. Oh, 3 more teams. I'm sorry. I lied.
Oh, wait. Did you see, before I'm going to forget, did you see the Don Mori Reddit where he complimented Shake?
I did. I tried to pick, actually, I knew you were going to bring it up. I go through the Reddit and I'm like, maybe he said something actually usable. And I couldn't find anything, even though it was super cool that he did it. And I see the Shake Milton thing, and I'm like, well, this is fan service. This doesn't mean anything. And
more specifically, mic service.
Yeah. And you bring it up. So he basically said that one of the first 2 things that he and Doc Rivers talked about were how, like, the league hasn't discovered how good Shake can be. And it's one of the things they're most excited about, right? Is that basically the quote?
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's also a really good video that Shake posted on Instagram of his dog just absolutely tackling him, just like totally coming around a corner, seeing him, being excited, and just like jumps right into his face. It's really very charming.
We need now I know 3 former Sixers, 1 current Sixer have had Big Barkers. I think we need to get Shake a Big Barker then, if he's got a dog. How big is that dog, do we think? It's
big. It's big? Like it's almost, I'd say almost Josh Richardson dog size.
Oh, okay. All right.
In that vein.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. I love that. It's so funny that Doc has seen probably one. He's seen Shake play 1 time, and it was the time he scored like 38 against him. And he's like, this guy, this is who he is. He's always going to be this guy. This is his. Why is he not shooting all the time? It's very funny. It's very like generic man to just be like, I saw it once. He's crazy. He's the best player I ever saw. It's like some guy seeing, I don't know, Dion Waiters drop 41 time and being like, that's the best player I've ever seen. I can't shake that out of my mind.
And isn't Doc Rivers sort of famous for signing the guy that was good against him? Because I think, did Doug Collins do that?
Yeah.
3 more teams in the East. The Raptors in Malachi Flynn, Aaron Baines, Alex Len, DeAndre Bembry. out, Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, kept Fred VanVleet. I mean,
yeah, and that's obviously the big one.
Yeah.
I think that they're worse. I know it's weird to say because the Raptors are the Raptors, and you kind of just got like trust that they're a good organization that's making the right decisions. But they were not. They picked up Marc Gasol at the deadline or around the deadline the year they won the title, and he really like fused their team together. And I think Aaron Baines is obviously good. We have he's going to shoot 1,000% against us. As soon as Marc Gasol left, it was like breath of like I could breathe easier that Embiid didn't have to play against him because that's like one of his biggest problems there. And then they bring in Aaron Baines, who is another one. But hopefully Joel is just too good that those kinds of like big, strong, immovable guys don't matter anymore. And he's getting, we could talk about the video, but him slimming down or making the choice to slim down, I think is the right option. But for Toronto, I think like, keeping VanVleet's a big deal. Losing your center rotation is tough. I think Baines is good. I think Alex Len is fine. Not scared of him hitting 3 threes in an elimination game like Ibaka did. I think the one that he hit with Simmons in his face was still haunting. Obviously the Kawhi shot is haunting, but like Ibaka hitting that shot, like with the shot clock winding down, like the ball's like at his ankles and he pulls it up over. It sucked. But I think that they're worse. I think that they, Siakam did not take a step forward last year. So I think they're counting on him to be better. I love Anunoby. Lowry's getting older, but it's still great. I think that this is, as constructed, not good enough to be a like conference finals team. I think that they didn't have a terrible offseason, but they just, when your guys get older and you have to replace them with other less good guys, then this is going to happen. So I think that they're taking a bit of a step back and kind of limiting their ceiling for now.
Yeah, I think once again in the regular season, they will be, I haven't adjusted to the 72 game schedule of what a 57, 56 win team would be. I imagine that's what they'll be. But, and like, look, Gasol got roasted in the playoffs last year, and who knows, like Ibaka is good some games, not good other games, but they're both, I would take Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka over Aaron Baines and Alex Len. Like I would.
I also think those guys can play together, Gasol and Ibaka, in a way that Baines and Len can't.
Right. I agree with you. Unless there's more to Fred VanVleet. I love Fred VanVleet. I would love for the Sixers to have him. I thought the deal they signed him on is actually really good, but I'm not a Siakam guy, and it just feels like a regular season team to me. So I agree. They're not as good. But
they still have Norman Powell also as a solid contributor. I wonder if you do something like, no, probably not. I wonder if you there's a world where you could, in the right matchup, go Siakam at the 5 and go like Lowry, VanVleet, Powell, Anunoby, Siakam, and Anunoby, Siakam are like good enough to like cosplay as big men for a little bit. And so I wonder if that's going to be what they try to do to like run teams off the floor.
The Heat, you're going to have to help me out with the draft pick's last name, Precious Achiuwa. And they add Mo Harkless and Avery Bradley, and then out are Jay Crowder, Derek Jones Jr., and Solomon Hill. I think this is a pretty like even in and out to me.
Yeah, it's relatively even, I would say. They also kept Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk. It's interesting. I think that Precious is a really interesting player. He was old for a freshman, but is super long and has a little bit of that Siakam type in him of like huge guy that can run the floor and kind of like finish weirdly. He's probably profiles more as a 5 than Siakam did. Achua was supposed to be the power forward to James Wiseman at Memphis, and then Wiseman only played 3 or 4 games, and then the NCAA ruled him ineligible. So Achua did have to play a lot of center and looked pretty good doing it. He was old for a freshman, but is a really interesting and pretty dynamic player. I can see why they want him. He's got a high motor too. I don't think he's a guy that can play with Bam. I don't really trust either of their shots together. So I wonder. how much. Maybe they think that he could. Maybe they think that the shot is developing and we'll get there. But I don't know how much he's going to give you right away because he's not a polished player at this point. It cannot be overstated how much of a boost they got from Jay Crowder.
Shooting like 70% from three.
Out of his mind and like being engaged and all this stuff. Both ends, like he was just like so good. And we've seen him not be good. So the fact that they got the most out of him is great. I think that Harkless is not the shooter that Jay Crowder is, and not the athlete that Derek Jones is. I think Avery Bradley will probably help them as like kind of just a hard-nosed guard that can make up for some of the weaknesses of their other guards. Goran Dragic at this point,
that they can throw on point guards, defensively can throw on point guards and he'll hit open shots. Yeah. I think Tyler Hero is not a bad defender and will continue to get better, but I think he's not going to be a plus defender really. And so I think that'll Avery Bradley being another, him and Jimmy Butler and Bam is like you can that's an anchor kind of everywhere, and you can have your shooters that are a little bit more one dimensional around those guys. I think they got, I would say, from the championship run that they were on, I would say that they got a little bit worse, but because they only really became this team at the end, I would say from last year as a whole, they probably got better. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's the same. That would be my guess. Harkless is pretty good. Like they will need, they've been rumored. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that Giannis is going to sign that Supermax extension, I would guess. They've been a Harden rumored place. Harden Butler doesn't work. I don't care what anybody says. That doesn't work. It'll really matter how much better Hero gets, and if Butler takes a step back, physically. He's 31 now or whatever, and was able to turn it on in the playoffs for sure. But I don't know. The team that they really are is somewhere in between who the regular season was and who they were in that playoff run. And the question where they fall, they could end up in the conference finals again, I think, pretty easily. Yeah. And then they weren't a contender. I didn't, do Orlando or New York or anybody that wasn't a contender. I just thought the Hawks made so many additions it was worth talking about. They draft Onyeka Okongwu and then sign Danilo Gallinari, Chris Dunn, Rajon Rondo, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and Solomon Hill. And they lose Jeff Teague, DeAndre Bembry, Dwayne Dedmon. They're obviously better. How much better? I don't know. Are they a 500 team? Are they an 8-seed team, do you think? Better or worse?
It's an interesting, because, Okongwu is great, and I really like him a lot. And I think he can come in right away and be playable. Mm-hmm. Whether or not he can be a starter as a defensive anchor on like a really good team, I think it'll take a couple of years, obviously. But I think he's probably better than Clint Capella now. But they have both of them. They can't play with each other. They do too many of the same things. Then they bring in Gallinari, but still have John Collins, who they don't necessarily want to give the contract that he wants because he's up for a contract after this season. And so are they really going to play him all season without anything in the books for next year? I think the Chris Dunn signing is great. That's exactly what you want next to Trae Young. I think Rondo is totally had a great bubble and will be another veteran type player to be around. Trae Young, I think the Bogdan signing is great. It's weird. They just kind of have too many guys a little bit. Like, I'm not a Cam Reddish guy. I think DeAndre Hunter is like okay.
They have Herter.
They have Kevin Herter, who I like a lot, and so I think he's going to be fine there. But it's just a matter of like sorting out what that front court rotation I think will be helpful. I think if I'm them, I would try to find a like really good defensive three, because that seems to be what they're missing. And package something like Cam Reddish and Clint Capella and like one of those other guys for a like like a real stopper type thing. And whether that, I mean, first thing comes to mind is probably not this guy anymore, but like Otto Porter, who's like above average, like Covington would have been a great fit there, like that kind of thing. So I mean, maybe they're just going to say like, hey, we have a lot of good players now, and like that's an embarrassment of riches. But I think there's more moves to come. I think this is a team that's over 500 right now, I would say.
Yeah, I think they're 500-ish, right around there. Otto Porter's just sitting there, still in Chicago, right? Making like 28 million a year,
a
or
lot.
something like that. Yeah.
He hasn't played. He's been like hurt, and it doesn't seem like he's been in any rush to get back. I don't know. I don't really know what's going on there. I think that they probably assume that he's playing, but I'm surprised that there hasn't been more of that yet. I wonder if the Bulls are bad again this year and he's unhappy, I wonder if that's like a sneaky buyout candidate. That could be.
Is he in the last year of his deal?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
The Sixers would be, Otto Porter is one of the things that they would need. You know, he would be great on this team, I think. Lorenzo Brown mailbag. I don't mean to upset you with the first email. You can send us emails, ricerickeysanchez@gmail.com. Please include a basketball and a non-basketball question. This comes from Tim. Mike, Tim says, gentlemen, who do you think is more likely to be verified first out of Mike and Sixers Adam?
My God.
We all know Mike wants it, but could Sixers Adam overtake him and pip him at the finish line? We'd love to know the thoughts. What would your thought?
I totally think Sixers Adam could and probably should. I think that there's a real conspiracy against me becoming the man I was always meant to become,
a verified
which
man.
is verified, lording my importance over people, which I would assume people that have like 550 followers and are inexplicably verified, working for like, I don't know, the friggin' like Charleston Gazette or whatever the fuck, like good for them. I'm sure they're telling everyone that they're who they say they are. And I just don't get that opportunity. And so I think that it really is a big time conspiracy. And why shouldn't Sixers Adam? Don't pit Sixers Adam and me against each other. Okay. High tide rises all boats. We could, whatever. We should be verified together in tandem.
The question is how are we supposed to tell the difference between you and all of the Mike Levin imposter accounts on Twitter, all the fake ones? There's no way to tell.
There's no way.
From Noah. Wait a minute. Is it Noah yet? Yes, from Noah. I got a question for you gentlemen about team building philosophy. There's been some talk on the pod lately about the idea that you save up chips, and when there's a championship window, you need to cash in those chips and max out your chances of winning. Do you see this philosophy being at odds with the idea that you try to put yourself in a position to always compete? I'm thinking about the Spurs dynasty and how they never seem to make all-in moves. I think this applies to the Heat too. As much as they're always waiting to pounce on the right situation, it's still almost always a long-term play. I'm concerned that underpinning basically every move the team has made in recent history is the idea that our championship window is absolutely correlated to us having Ben and Joe, and when they're gone, we'll have to endure another period of extended mediocrity. We never reached the point with Hinkie where we were close enough to go all in, but I always assumed he was trying to create sustainable greatness. Is that idea unrealistic in the modern NBA? I thought it was an interesting question because that was what I believed the Hinkie thing to be, is this self-sustaining thing that you're always great. And that is a little bit at odds with the Morey thing of if you have even a 10% chance of winning a championship, you put all your chips in the middle. What do you think?
I think that after this many years of Daryl having James Harden and not winning a championship or even getting to a championship with James Harden, I think makes him consider how like precious those opportunities are that have always kind of eluded him. And so I think, like you mentioned the Spurs, like the Spurs were obviously, you know, the preeminent franchise for decades. If Tim Duncan gets hurt in any of those times, like it's over. So like his fantastic health kept them afloat so they could be really good for a long time and not bottom out or whatever. They're also incredibly well coached and like ahead of the curve in so many areas and stuff. But like, you can't assume that your best player and defensive anchor is going to be healthy for 15 years, you know, especially not Ben and Joel, who we've already sort of listed their injuries and problem areas. So in my mind, it is that the NBA has gotten smarter over the last 10 years. And so I think teams are, you don't just get to do the same thing over and over again. Teams are like finding you out and scheming against you, whether that's on the court or just like in terms of like transactions and stuff. So I think that as much as being good always and then having a couple seasons where it all just kind of works out, I think that that's ideal for sure. And if you have, as long as we have Ben and Joel, we'll be that for as long as they're around and playing at this level. I do think that the NBA, like especially adding on to, you know, players getting dissatisfied and wanting to leave, if you're not actually getting there and showing these players that you're trying to win at all costs right now, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're seeing it with Giannis, like they had to trade so much just to get Drew so they could be like, hey, see, we care. I think that it is a little bit of a different era of like, even the Warriors were like, they weren't, you know, they were good for they were elite for 4 years, and then guys get hurt and you move on. And like, it's just, it's amazing how quickly it can end. And so I think I'm not saying you trade everything and go all in so that you become the, you know, Cavs from a couple years ago once LeBron left, and have absolutely nothing to build around. I think that there's something short of that can still set you up for like possible future success. But I do think that when there's an opportunity and you see the right move to make that could actually get you there, I do think you got to hit. I mean, Daryl's been too close for too long to not get it, and the Sixers now have been somewhat close for too long to not make that happen.
Well, I mean, they haven't been out of the second round
for sure, but they've been, you know, in the conversation and
right.
Being like, if they, I'm not saying that they were like knocking on the door or something, but they're at least been in the conversation for long enough with two guys that are, you know, not the healthiest players to not do it.
I think there's levels to it, right? You talked about the Cavs knowing that, hey, this is like, here's LeBron, the best player in the league. If we do not optimize every year, and we don't know how long he's going to be here, we're fucking up. Or even Morey, in the last few years he was in Houston, he was like, I have Harden here. This definitely puts me in the talk for a championship. You know, I have a 10% chance every time Harden steps on the floor of winning a championship. I got to go all in. And I just think there's different. And, you know, the NBA is not only smarter right now, it's just more chaotic. You know, counting on sustained success. By the way, not only was Tim Duncan great, all those things, he was never going to leave. Mm-hmm. You knew he was never going to leave. I don't think that exists anywhere at this point. You can never rely on that. Before we get to the final couple of mailbag questions, our sponsor, LL Pavorsky Jewelers, is there as my dog goes fucking nuts. Mail guy's probably here. LL Pavorsky Jewelers is there as you prepare for Christmas and New Year's. You need gifts, you need jewelry, you want to propose, you know, you've been stuck in quarantine with your girlfriend for 9 months and you guys still aren't engaged and you want to buy a ring or something. LL is your guy. Sold engagement rings to 202 Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners. If you're already married, you need something special? Come on, LL is your guy. He's making sure the whole experience is safe. By appointment only in store. You don't want to go in store. He does everything online for you. He's not going to pressure you into anything. He's going to explain everything he's got. If you have $100 to spend, if you have $10,000 to spend, anywhere in between, LL's is your guy. He has been with the Ricky since the very beginning, our very first sponsor, and continues to make just everyone happy. There are several babies of Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners who exist because their parents got married with an LL Pavorsky ring. They would not have been fertile otherwise. If you want to buy a ring or a present or whatever you want, LL is your guy. Send him an email so you can come up with an appointment if you want to go in store, or if you want to set something up online. Lee@llpavorsky.com. Call the store at 215-627-2252, or just tweet at them at LL Pavorsky. Always supporting our charities, Coded by Kids, Providence Animal Center, LL Pavorsky Jewelers.
Should be texting me any minute to see if it's time yet.
This comes from Brian, who has 2 questions. First, you guys have really filled out the Rights to Ricky Sanchez roster. So how would it come together in a pickup basketball game? I know Mike is the pesky defender, but who fills the other roles? What kind of offense are you guys trying to run? Obviously, I can't play. My back issues make it impossible, which I guess makes me the coach, which is not great either. Do we know anything else about the games of the rest of the rest of the people?
I don't. I feel like Sixers Adam tweets about being able to shoot. And I don't know Zoe's game. I don't know Unterberger's game. I don't know Abby's game.
MOC's game.
MOC seems like we've heard that he's good.
Yeah, I think he can play. He's hinted that he can play. So I don't know. Do we base the offense around Mike O'Connor, at least because we think he can play based on a few things that he said?
We'll figure it out. How tall is Zoe? He's not that tall, is he?
I work with
5'10".
It's so funny. I work with Zoe, and even though I work with him, I have not seen him for nearly a year, so it's hard to remember. I don't think he's that tall. I'm 5'10", 5'10 and a half. I think he's around my height. I don't think he's tall.
Sixers Adam not tall either, right?
No, but AU is tall. AU's tall.
AU's got some length,
but very thin.
Good. That's what we need. We'll get into, once the pandemic's over, we'll get some scrimmages out. We'll work out the kinks in practice, and we'll see.
Second question. I've been lucky enough to be able to work from home for most of this year. As a long-distance commuter, this has been very much a silver lining. As a very small, shouldn't complain drawback, it has brought back a drastic change in my podcast listening. I used to be in the car about an hour each way, 5 days a week, factor in listening at 1.5 speed, which I personally don't approve of, and I needed 15 hours worth of podcast a week. So of course I made time for the Ricky, but I pretty much lost track of my other pods. So my question is, outside of a car, how the heck are you supposed to listen to a podcast? Sit down in the living room and just let it play while you stare at the wall? Do I try to drag the wife into listening? It feels weird to have my headphones in while she's in the same room. And walks and runs are okay, but music tends to work better for me on that front. Do you have any hints on that?
I listen to podcasts while I do the dishes. I listen to podcasts while I brush my teeth and wash my face before bed and stuff, and while I'm in the shower. On a walk, sure. If I played video games, I would listen to podcasts while I played video games if I didn't need to hear the sound really. But I agree. It certainly is a drawback. And I'm still driving around to sometimes go pick up groceries or food or anything. So a little bit of that, but yeah, without as much of a commute, it is harder. And I feel like I'm a little bit sometimes owned by my podcast feed. If I haven't, it'll start to wear on me. If I was I haven't listened to it, I'm backed up. I don't know. And sometimes, and I was well, who's the boss here of this situation? It's me. I'm the man. I'm the person. I'm the human man. I can decide if I don't want to listen to this podcast. And so I'll get a real rush sometimes. I'm just you know what? Delete. Not even going to listen to it. Get it off my chest, off my shoulders.
So I am different in almost every way. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I really only have 2 or 3 that I listen to regularly. I don't like listening in the car. There's something about the pace of podcasts, which are normally slower, that if I'm listening to it while I'm driving, I will find almost like what happens to me when I'm reading. A lot of times when I'm reading, I'll notice that I've been reading for 6 pages, but the last 3 pages, I don't even know what I read. I spaced out. That happens to me when I listen to podcasts in cars. I can't keep up with it. I space out. So I'm pretty exclusively either music or radio in the car. For me, it is walking my dog, running. Now, I do listen to music while I run. Depends on if I need a boost or not. It depends how far back I am in podcasts. I will listen when I run if I am behind. And cleaning the house, I will usually use podcasts. If there's any yard work I need to do, I will do podcasts. And I know this sounds crazy, but sometimes I will take a walk just to listen to podcasts. If I'm behind, I'll be like, you know what? I'll take a half-hour walk. So to me, walking is the best. Running is second best. Car is a distant third for me. So that's all I got. We will be back this week. Camp starts this week. We thought it was going to be this ridiculously long off season. As it turns out, it was the shortest off season we've ever had. So, and not because the Sixers won the championship, unfortunately. So we'll be back later this week. Thanks to everyone who participated in the Black Friday sale. All those new shirts are still available, and they're only $19.99 anyway. So, which is basically cheaper than any podcast shirt you're going to find anywhere. High quality, screen printed, not that digital print shit. So good quality t-shirts.
Go buy Sixers Odyssey by Dave Reuter, which I've already bought as a Christmas gift for a friend. So it'd be a great gift for the Sixers lunatic in your life. Yeah,
and the other good thing about that book is you do not have to read it. Everything, as you mentioned when we were talking to Dave, everything is broken up into 2 to 4 page sections that you don't have to read in order, and you can skip stuff if you're not interested in it. So it's easy to read if you have like 10 minutes to throw a book into. Good toilet book if you keep a book in the toilet. So
I've always thought of Dave as a toilet person, and so I think this is really a perfect summation.
That's it. We'll talk to you later this week. Are you down with TTP?
Yeah, lick face.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me,
then I won't fuck with you.
But if you fuck with me,
I'm gonna fucking kill you! Time for plan B.